And then to go ahead, just up and tell the dude to bounce, tell the kids that, they're not going to be seeing their father come home every single evening because apparently they are having issues that they need to sort out. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying what she did was good or bad, or actually, wait, no, yes, what she did was absolutely fucking bad. Like, that shit does not make sense at all. Like, I would at least want to back that shit up with some level of evidence.
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
Welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who sees the ass in Assumption, the ass in Astounding, and the semen between the tits in advertisements. He is also a man whose sickness for the thickness prevents him from skinny dipping. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. And I am here to correct women, even though that legit sounds like some shit they usually call mansplaining. Like, the fact that they came up with a term that was men explaining and they just combined that shit and called it mansplaining is wild, alright? But considering that there are some things that some women may look at and think they're right on, but they're not entirely right on, I feel like it is my duty as a man that speaks on matters guy in love, sex, and relationships to at least clarify. So before you conclude that I'm mansplaining, maybe you should listen all the way till the end of the episode. Then, if you like it, if you don't like it, or if you want to provide feedback, or if you want to suggest a potential topic for me to discuss, then you can hit me up via the DMs because my DMs are always open, and the social media links are usually in the description below, which is IG, Facebook, X, and even Bluesky, which isn't that known to a lot of people, but you know what? I'm still there for you guys. Alright, and also if you end up on any of those pages, a nice follow would be appreciated because who wouldn't want more followers, you know? But then again, maybe that's just me. But all in all, I am going to leave it at that and move things on. And before I can get into anything, because normally this is the point in time where I talk about how I should be getting to the main topic, but I want to discuss A, B, C, or D. And I'll usually talk about something that I find to be particularly interesting in the world today, whether it's, stuff that relates to Kenya, Africa, or just globally in general. And, and it can vary from different topics. But this time I want to do things a little bit differently. Just kind of change things up and speak on something that's bothered me for quite a while. And I think I might even remove instrumentals for this because I feel like it's something that just needs my voice to just come out without anything in the background. And that is the issue that is my country's situation right now. Now, for those of y'all that may not know too much about the podcast, maybe you're new, maybe you don't pay that much attention. I am from Nairobi, Kenya, which is Kenya, the country itself. And about 2 days from the time this episode is posted up, we had our demonstrations. Actually, it was more like an anniversary for the June 25th demonstrations that we had last year, where a couple of people died. And ever since then, we've had issues with police brutality, with police abductions, and a couple other issues here and there. And it's been a particularly tough time for us as just, the youth, if I can call it that, or Gen Zs, as some people would call us, regardless of whether you classify as like late stage millennial or Gen Z or even Gen Alpha, because it was dubbed the Gen Z protest. But all in all, like even for me as an individual, it's been particularly painful hearing these stories and watching a lot of these stories come out on the abductions and the kidnappings and the brutality and some of the bad situations that have been happening to a lot of Kenyans and young Kenyans at that for this entire time. And honestly, like, yes, I may hop onto this podcast and I may make jokes and I may give content that, to be quite honest, I usually give because I believe that more often than not people are listening so that they can take a break from some of the everyday issues that they go through. But all in all, like, this is a problem that's affected everyone in this country, including me, because this is a case of bad governance. This is a case of just mismanagement of so many departments, funds, and so on and so forth. And it is quite sad. It is quite sad when I hear stories of people being killed. It was particularly sad when the demonstrations happened and we lost 9 people, and yet it was supposed to be a peaceful protest. Like, it's absolutely fucking sad what it is that's happening. And for anyone that's listening, whether you're a Kenyan, whether you know Kenyans, even though you don't know Kenyans and you just listen because you enjoy the content, if you do believe in a religious deity of some sort, just pray for Kenya, because fuck me, we need positive change. We definitely need positive change. Of course, for those of us that can try and push for some positive change and through some form of activism, I'm sure, they will do the absolute best. And I'll try to do my best as a part of this country, as a young person in this country. Even though, I'm not gonna lie, this shit is an extreme sport. Either way, just the hope for positive change is something that we need to hold on to. And honestly, shit's been tough lately. All right. And with that dose of reality put there, and with that said, I am going to leave it at that and move things on, because I'm sure that y'all were listening so that you can get entertained. And moving from reality on to some shit that sounds like absolute science fiction. Now, there's a woman in Europe who recently filed for divorce after ChatGPT analyzed her husband's coffee and suggested that he was cheating. Alright, now, I'm not gonna lie to you, this shit actually sounds like purebred bullshit. But let me just read the story, then I can give my thoughts on the entire thing. So the story says, and I quote, "A Greek woman has filed for divorce after asking ChatGPT to interpret leftover coffee grounds, an AI-assisted reading that allegedly revealed her husband was fantasizing about another woman. The incident followed a rising trend known as AI tasseography, where people upload photos of coffee cup residue and ask AI to read them. In this case, the chatbot claimed to see signs of infidelity, specifically naming a woman whose name began with an E and warning she was trying to destroy the family. The woman, convinced by the interpretation, immediately told her husband to leave, informed their children of the split, and filed for divorce without confronting him directly. She thought it was fun, the husband told Greek media. I laughed it off. But next thing I knew, I got a call from her lawyer. When he refused mutual separation, she served formal papers. His lawyer is now challenging the case, arguing that AI-generated interpretation of coffee stains have no legal basis. Traditional tasseography experts have also weighed in, pointing out that true readings require more than just photos of grounds. Factors like foam and swirl patterns matter too." End quote. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, this shit makes the whole idea of a man committing suicide because of his AI girlfriend seem a little bit more plausible and a little less crazy than it sounded initially last year. Because there was actually a story like that last year. There was a teenager that had an AI girlfriend that pushed him towards committing suicide so that he could be with her. Now, normally, for those of us that understand that AI isn't all the way perfect, we would probably look at that shit and be like, what the hell was this guy thinking? This is absolute madness. Why would you commit suicide because a computer program, let's call it for what it is, a computer program, basically told you to off yourself? That shit sounds absolutely fucking wild. But now you see a story like this and you're like, you know what? I think this guy was probably onto something, or the both of these people are absolutely knocked in the head, because how the fuck are you trusting AI this much that you're like, you know what, I will put coffee grounds, as in the roasted shit that is used to make coffee that people will have at the bottom of their cup and shit. You take a photo, you upload that shit to ChatGPT, and then whatever answer it gives you, you choose to believe it because there is a study called tasseography that is able to help you find out shit about someone using used coffee grounds. I'm not saying the study itself is absolute garbage, because there are actually people that do that shit. It's just, you guys are choosing to trust ChatGPT after all the times that ChatGPT has been proven to be highly inaccurate. From the studies it's made up out of thin air, from most of the BS that people have said concerning ChatGPT not being completely accurate and it having to evolve and get better over time. I'm trying to wrap my head around this, and it's actually very, very wild. Because this woman single-handedly destroyed a marriage and a family simply because ChatGPT told her that there might be a case of infidelity. And the interesting thing is, even ChatGPT itself acknowledges that it's never accurate. So the fact that this woman decided to go on the word of ChatGPT was particularly odd, alright? And then to go ahead, just up and tell the dude to bounce, tell the kids that, they're not going to be seeing their father come home every single evening because apparently they are having issues that they need to sort out. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying what she did was good or bad, or actually, wait, no, yes, what she did was absolutely fucking bad. Like, that shit does not make sense at all. Like, I would at least want to back that shit up with some level of evidence. And usually I'm not the biggest fan of like, okay, go check his phone or some shit. But honestly, if you needed to go and like look for more proof, I think that would probably work. This is like going to a fortune teller and the fortune teller telling you that you're going to receive 10 million in the next 24 hours and you go and you quit your fucking job. Like, you're not sure about that shit, but you're still gonna go and do it? I don't think she would do that, but she clearly decided to end her marriage and break up the family over that shit. And I find it absolutely wild that she felt perfectly confident in ChatGPT over actually doing some good old-fashioned, as a woman I have a sixth sense type method. Like, I feel like that method would have probably worked a hell of a lot better than her trying to use ChatGPT. Like, usually us guys will clown babes on them talking about their sixth sense, about their man cheating on them. But this babe was like, you know what, fuck a sixth sense, I'ma go and use coffee grounds on ChatGPT. Like, that shit is absolutely wild. And I'm hoping from their court case it's actually proven that this babe was absolutely nuts to trust it, and that does not count as grounds for infidelity, so that if this guy wants to countersue with an actual divorce, this guy should get some level of compensation, because what kind of shit is this? Can't be subjected to someone's stupidity and then you're expected to pay for that shit. Might as well get compensated, right? Although, then again, maybe I don't know enough about coffee grounds or infidelity to actually point out if someone is actually committing it, so I am going to leave it at that, and you can give me your thoughts on it later on in the DMs, but I am going to move it on to our main topic of this episode, and this one involves a lot of talk about men. Yes, I spoke about mansplaining and women, but this involves a talk about men, and to be more specific, male pride. Now, people usually talk about how pride comes before a fall and, a bunch of other BS like that, but this isn't that. This isn't me talking about how pride comes before a fall. Nope, this is me talking about the fact that men pride themselves on certain things, at least on a social level or just out here, and how apparently, according to a female podcaster known as Chidera, they have been given a chance to be seen as, whole beings, but apparently we as men do not want to take that up, and we would much rather go back to whatever it is that we believe should give us pride. Now, I have a bunch of thoughts about this and I may go off a little bit, but before I can do any of that, let me first let the clip play. So without further ado,
what men pride their manhood on, ironically, is their success, is their money, is the size of their dick. And as much as we spend time trying to encourage men to see themselves as a full multidimensional human being, and we try to remind men that you're a person, it's okay to have feelings, it's okay to see yourself beyond the vessel you've been born into, they still insist on clinging onto those patriarchal ideas about themselves. And that's the prison that they have unfortunately locked themselves in. And they are happily wearing that key. They don't care to dismantle the structures anytime soon.
Okay. Apparently we're wearing the key and we don't want to dismantle the structures anytime soon or get ourselves out of that prison anytime soon. I don't know. Okay, so just to give a bit of context, this was a clip that was taken from a podcast episode that was done by a man called Paul Brunson and a lady known as Chidera, who owns a podcast called the Slumflower Podcast. And there's a bunch of things that I want to say about this, but I don't want to sound like I have a grudge against women. So I'll just give that disclaimer. It's not that I have anything against women. I think it's just that some things need me to elaborate, and how I'm going to elaborate might not come off as particularly nice. Just a bit of a disclaimer there. Now, I'm going to start things off with a little bit of a nitpick, because considering that I don't think I'm really gonna have too much time to talk about it, I might as well just bring up one of the smallest issues in this entire thing, which kind of bugged me, and that was the whole idea of mentioning the patriarchy. Now, don't get me wrong, I know there's some people that believe in it, there's some people that don't, but frankly, I have never understood this whole obsession with women trying to blame things on this supposedly, group of men that supposedly oppress women and make life hard for all of humanity and shit, because it just doesn't make sense to me. Because when I look at the idea of the patriarchy, I'd have at least expected that it would benefit men for the most part. But the people that are most disproportionately affected by so-called patriarchy are men. You would think that it would be used to oppress women, but same old patriarchy seems to benefit women in multiple different areas. Yes, not everywhere, but it's not like it's a system that's particularly trying to benefit anyone at all. If you were to call it elitist to some degree, or just some level of like valuing people in the upper echelon, then maybe you could argue that shit, because we have heard of stories of such a thing. But assuming that it's one gender of people that is trying to oppress the other gender plus some of their own, just seems a little bit wild in my view. But then again, that's just me. I just think that most of this shit is usually a bunch of BS and just a bunch of cope that a bunch of women would come up with to try and make sense of a world that they don't entirely understand. But anyways, that one was mostly opinion rather than fact, so I am going to leave it at that point and actually try and address some of the things that she said. Now, one of the biggest issues that I find with, I won't just say her, but I'd even say a lot of women, I'm not going to say most or all, a lot of women, is that a lot of y'all will usually say you want something and you will claim that that is actually what you want, but in reality, that's not really what it is that you want, because what you end up showing that you want, or what you end up practicing as what it is that you want, is usually completely different. It's like there's usually this joke that guys will always make about how women don't know what they want in a man up until they get it. And then, you will kind of argue that out. Women will be like, oh no, we know exactly what it is that we want. Then you see the examples of guys that they end up with, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, there's clearly a pattern here, okay? And that's usually a pretty clear show, but this is probably one of the most elaborate shows of women talking about something that they say they want and then them not entirely wanting that exact same thing. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not like I know about her love life or the guys that she's been with, but more often than not, women will talk about how they want men to be more whole, to show that they're not just about being about money, success, and a big dick. But guess what? A lot of these women seem to be going for money, success, and a big dick. Like, that's quite literally what you guys have been going for. And I will get into why that is actually a pretty big reason why us guys actually don't deviate from that. But essentially, that's what we usually see a lot of babes going for, particularly for us as young guys. You see a babe who's like, no, I want a guy who's good, who's caring, who's compassionate, who will treat me with a lot of affection, blah, blah. You try do that for her. My G, you're getting friend zoned. The guy that will go and, take her out, treat her, and spoil her in a couple of different ways here and there, and potentially have a massive dick, or you could even remove a bunch of those things and just slap either one. The guy is either successful, or he has a lot of money, or he has a big dick, and guess what? This guy will be bagging said women. So for us guys to be like, oh no, we're not going to pay attention to that anymore, that's just an example of us guys not paying attention to what the market wants. So if the market shows that that's what it is that they want, as far as practical examples are concerned, then that's what we're going to go for. And the thing is, I know success, money, and a big dick aren't the biggest indicators or even the best indicators of what a good partner should be. Hell, I think most guys know that for a fact. But guess what women seem to be gravitating to a lot out here? It is those exact same things. So if a guy has any or a combination or even all of those things, what do you think he's going to be bragging about? If not that. Out here in an environment where multiple people might want the same person, of course a guy is going to want to stand out by showing that he is superior to a fellow man. Like, of course we're going to do that. And guess how we're going to try and show it? In the exact same ways that would make us seem more attractive to the opposite sex. And the weird part about it is, like, women will usually have this whole discussion of men should be vulnerable, men shouldn't be just focusing on money, success, and a big dick, like this woman is saying. But you look at some of their younger years, and that's what they were chasing. You look at a lot of them, it's usually when they're at a much more mature stage in their lives, that's when they're like, you know what, I want a vulnerable man, I want a good man, I want a caring man. And the problem with that is, you find that a lot of women will show that they want a guy with money, success, and a big dick, all right? And I'm quite literally just using those examples because those were the ones that she provided. So they want a guy with those qualities, and that's usually when they're in the earlier years. And guys, of course, they will probably look at that and be like, you know what, I am a good guy and this is what I can provide. But if she's going to the guy that has either money, success, or a big dick, then of course, what is this guy going to do? He's going to pivot and move towards what it is that the market, quote unquote, actually wants. And at that point, now he'll be chasing it. Of course, those things minus a big dick are usually things that require time for you to kind of build up, not unless if you're like a prodigy or you have inheritance and shit, or you're just famous by design. And eventually, like by the time you're scooping all of that up and you have enough of that you can brag, suddenly it's like now there's women that are like, you know what, I want a vulnerable man, I want a man that cares about me, I want a man that doesn't have blah blah and blah, because those are red flags. I don't want a man that brags about money, success, or having a big dick. And you're like, then what the fuck did you expect us to do? Because yes, those things are very short term, and I think over time a lot of women realize that a lot of that shit is very, very short term. And it's unfortunate that, you know, it'll probably take a bunch of experience for most women that end up out here in the dating market to realize that a lot of that shit is very short term. Then the moment they decide to pivot over and, you know, choose to go for the more holistic long-term things that they should look for in a partner, suddenly now they're filled with a bunch of guys that wanted them, or even still want them, but have been chasing all the things that they seemed to want back then. So at that point, you'll have a bunch of babes busy complaining about how guys are just focusing on the money, the success, or the fact that they have a big dick or claim to have a big dick. Yet you want something more than that. You want something deeper, you know, more holistic. But guess what? Like, the change, or at least the desire that you had that was very short term, has become their long-term goal. So they decide to chase the long term. They decide to focus on that as a long-term thing. And you shift your priorities, and suddenly it's like, oh, where are all the good men at? Oh, I want a caring and intentional man. I don't want a guy that just brags about how much money he has or what size dick he's got or some shit like that. And the unintended consequence of you not making that change early enough and you keeping your desires towards that for a bunch of time is that guys just shifted their priorities and went to that route. So you can't really say that it's men that are holding the keys but we're not changing. It's something that a lot of men chose to adapt to because they saw that that's what the market that they felt they were a part of wanted, and so they are just shifting perspectives and choosing to go for that. And changing the market or shifting the market in a different direction again is going to be a lot of work for these guys to do, because it's a complete mindset change that they themselves just do not know how to initiate. But then let's even move on to the part about vulnerability and feelings and showing that you're more than just the vessel that you were born into, like she said. Like, if there's one thing that a lot of guys today have realized, it's the fact that just opening up to your partner, just opening up to women, just isn't really that great of an idea. And don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm saying that you should never open up to a woman or some shit. There are some good women that will actually listen to you. It's just that for the most part, this whole talk of men should be vulnerable, for the most part hasn't been of much benefit to a lot of men. Like, at least from the whole you should be vulnerable with your partner bit, that shit has not been particularly beneficial to a lot of men. And it kind of comes back to that whole thing about saying what it is that you want and not necessarily living that which is what you say about what it is that you want. Like, a lot of times you find that men are afraid to be vulnerable with women, most of their partners, because a lot of times it is either weaponized or fetishized. The idea that, you know, you love a man that can be vulnerable with you. You want your man to be vulnerable with you. Almost like it's supposed to satisfy some sort of emotional urge that some women have, or so that it can end up being used later on against dude. Because guess what, whenever women are losing an argument, they'll always go for like the pettiest shit or like the most vulnerable bit so that they can win. And you're in a situation like that, you go through something like that as a dude, and it becomes particularly hard for you to open up to your partner or a partner again, just mostly because you do not trust that they will be able to actually take your vulnerability and treasure it and actually value it, and not use it as some sort of content for their friends. Oh, my guy was doing this and that, or use it against you, or use it so that they can utilize whatever thought speak they've been hearing on TikTok or some shit so that they can try and explain your life away. Like, it's hard to be in that position. And the annoying part about it is there's a lot of women that talk about how men should be vulnerable, like just the same way as women is doing, just talking constantly about how men should be vulnerable, men should, open up to their partners. And yet in reality, it's not like you guys even know how to handle that in and of itself when it comes to dealing with your partner. I was once with someone who adamantly insisted that men should be able to open up to their partners, and they should definitely, speak up whenever they're going through something, so that their partner can be there with them, because, your partner should be like your best friend or some shit. I kid you the hell not. I had a small situation where I wasn't feeling all that great emotionally, and I opened up to her. Kid you the fuck not, I was ignored, and the next time I was talking about it, she was like, but you had friends before me that used to open up to you. You should have opened up to them. And you think that most guys will open up to you or whatever other potential partners they end up with after going through something like that? Like, really though? Really though? Like, I think this whole vulnerability thing that women like to push towards men, and granted, I know it probably comes from a good place in someone's heart whenever they started it, wherever they started it, but for the most part, I don't think it particularly benefits men in the long run. Like, there's so many men that have tried to be vulnerable and they've ended up even more hurt after trying to be vulnerable with their partners. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be vulnerable with your partner. It's just that I don't think most partners, or a lot of female partners, are worth being vulnerable with. And I know it's a very unpopular opinion. It's not something that a lot of women would ever really agree with, because they want you to be vulnerable with them and shit like that. But honestly, I just don't think most women are built to watch a guy who they view as their strength break down and actually be weak and actually be vulnerable with them. Like, that duality just doesn't work in their books. It's a pretty big part of the reason why, even when I'm talking to the homies and, like we're talking about how to deal with issues, I'm like, there's nothing wrong with crying. And honestly, I think as a dude, it is perfectly okay to cry. Just make sure you do it in the privacy of your own space in a dark corner somewhere, so that no one sees you crying. Because sometimes people can weaponize that shit against you. Sometimes people may stop looking at you the same way from the moment they see you crying. All right. And the thing with women that I don't think a lot of women get with vulnerability is, and I won't even talk about the whole how they weaponize that vulnerability against themselves in a bunch of different friend groups and a lot of different times. But I think the thing with a lot of women is that they think the social leniency that they get to be emotional applies to men just as much as it applies to women, which isn't really the case. Like, you will find that women are allowed to be emotional. You can have a tantrum, you can lose your shit, but it's not like guys are allowed to do the same thing. Your partner leaves you and you break down and you start crying. Niggas are gonna look at you like, nigga, what the fuck are you doing? But if you're a babe, you can call your friend, whichever it is, whether it's male, whether it's female. He loved me. How could he do blah, blah, and blah to me? Like, you can do that and they will let you vent and they will let you go off as much as you can. And they will be totally understanding and they'll be like, you know what? Oh, you didn't deserve this. Oh, you deserve better, blah, blah. Whatever the hell it is that they will tell you to make you feel better about yourself. Guys do not get that luxury. We do not get the luxury of being emotionally expressive and being emotionally open with people, because we're expected to be strong people first and performers second. Emotional is further down the fucking list, all right? And I know it sounds absolutely bad, but that is the truth for most guys. We're expected to imbue a sense of strength at all times. And you emotionally breaking down in front of people does not convey that strength. Which is why the moment you start breaking down in front of people as a man, you're automatically seen as a weaker man. And that's an unfortunate reality, and it absolutely fucking sucks. But guess what? That's the society that we live in. But you want to know something interesting? Out of all of this, out of this entire situation, the one thing that would have changed all of this is if women collectively decided that what it is that they love about a man is not his money, success, or his big dick, but it's how caring, intentional, and open he is. If women wanted that overall, to the point where they instinctively go for guys like that, guys would shift. Because, and I kid you the hell no, this is actually something that some economists believe, most of what men do out here in these streets, most of what men do in totality is for female validation. Dressing well for the ladies, trying to look good for the ladies, trying to stack up dough for the ladies, trying to make sure that you're a good provider for the ladies, trying to be a good person so that you can secure a good lady. Like, a lot of what it is that guys do out here is for the validation and for the likeness and for the ability to bag women. So if you guys shifted your priorities as an entire collective gender, then at that point, you will find that men will shift their priorities from wanting money, success, or a big dick to having a lot more emotional awareness, to being more intentional as people, to being more vulnerable as human beings. Because guess what? If women say they want that shit, there's a pretty good chance that guys will start to provide that shit for them. Alright? And to kind of conclude all of this, all I want to say is, if you really want men to change, you need to start the change collectively as women. Alright? It usually starts with the women, and the men will usually follow through. Otherwise, everything that's being said out here, which is usually what a lot of women, whenever they're a little bit more mature, a little bit more grown, usually start to say, is mostly a pack of bull, which won't really fly because most guys are just trying to respond to what a vast chunk of the potentially marriageable women out here would actually want, which is, guess what? Money, success, and a big dick. Although, then again, maybe I might be wrong about this. Maybe I might be wrong about a bunch of other things. Either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the Breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the Breaktime Podcast. On X, it is at Bagaka_the_D. And on Bluesky, it is at the BreaktimePod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.